Today I have Pritesh from the channel KAIZN Crypto. And if you haven't checked that out yet and you're a Cardano fan, please do head over there, check out his channel, show him some love, hit the subscribe button. Pritesh, thanks very much for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hashoshi. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for those who don't know about you, Pritesh, can you give people a little bit of an update of how you got into crypto, what your background is, and what you're doing these days
Yeah,
on YouTube?
absolutely. So I got started with crypto around about 2017. I saw the huge run up in price and
Yeah,
ICO mania. It was an experience for sure. And then going to 2018, the bear market.
yeah,
Really just having no idea what I was doing. This was like really my first kind of venture into investing.
yeah.
And doing research and trying to find different projects. I came across Cardano. Got really interested in the tech.
Nice.
Really interested in the team. Watching Charles's whiteboard video. So yeah, lots of really that's kind of taken me down the rabbit hole.
Nice.
With Cardano, just trying to get as involved as possible, and I started a YouTube channel, just figuring out, hey, if I'm doing a whole bunch of research, might as well share it. So
Right on, man.
yeah, and here we are today. Got the Stakepool up and running. I'm super excited about that.
That's cool.
So
So
it's been a fun experience.
do you come from a tech background?
So funny that you asked that. I know because you're actually a programmer.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have any coding experience per se, but do have some tech background. Like right now, I work at a tech company.
Cool.
But yeah, no like programming background or anything like that.
Cool. Yeah. And I think that that's a great point that we should talk about, because I think a lot of people think that to be involved in this, even, not to necessarily develop smart contracts, which I would argue, even if you're not a programmer, you can learn to do. If you have a little bit of tech knowledge, or you have a little bit of tech fluency, then you're able to participate in all these things. The Stakepool stuff. Maybe at the very beginning it's a little bit more difficult because the tools aren't there and it's not as well developed. But now here we are, and it's not as difficult to get started as it used to be. So
Yeah.
I think people should give it a try if they can. Do you have any tips for someone who wants to start, actively getting involved in, not just Cardano, but maybe other environments where you have to set up a node and set up staking and such?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, going back to the point where I didn't have much coding experience. I do think that having some type of familiarity with the command line is probably as basic as it can get. Having those basic tools. For me, setting up my stake pool, the biggest tip, I guess I could say, for people who don't have any type of programming experience is to get comfortable with learning different like syntaxes. If you can learn like, basic command functions in a command line, that helped me out tremendously. Also, I just wanted to say thank you to one of my friends who helped me get the stake pool up together. His name is the Duck Pool.
Cool.
He kind of like held my hand throughout the entire process. So really being able to reach out to members in the community who do have that experience. And the Cardano community is great. Just so many awesome people with all the content creators and, all these people with the stake pool operators who are putting out guides.
Yeah.
So there's lots of resources available.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So did you follow, to set yours up, did you follow the tutorial that's on the IOHK website and the documentation there?
Yeah, so the videos from IOHK were pretty helpful. I guess you could say for non-technical people, it's maybe not the easiest thing to follow.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, and for that, in that instance, what I would recommend is Proof of Africa. Max is actually a member of Proof of Africa. He has a kind of like a step-by-step guide. I would definitely recommend that for non-technical people.
Awesome. So it's like a, command by command, test by test to get you across the finish line, get your stake pool running.
Yeah.
That's great.
To finish.
So now that you've gotten your stake pool running, could you give a little bit of background for people that might not even know what the stake pool is all about, what it does, what it allows you to do? Could you just fill people in on what a stake pool is all about in the Cardano ecosystem?
Sure, yeah. So with Cardano is going to be proof of stake. Now with proof of stake, essentially, so you're not going through the process of mining. With proof of work, like with Bitcoin, you have to have ASIC miners. So these huge, heavy-duty, power-consuming machines. With a stake pool, what that does is it allows you to help support the network. But with staking, you don't necessarily have to have that huge mining capacity. It depends on how many coins that you're holding within the entire ecosystem. So that stake pool allows users on the network to contribute to your stake pool with the process of delegating. Stake pool basically is just a way to help maintain the network by mining blocks, depending on how much stake that you're holding to your stake pool. I know it's kind of complex,
Yeah.
but you know, as far as how I would consider it in layman's terms, so having a stake pool allows you to help operate the network, and by delegating to a stake pool, you can get rewarded for helping the security of the network. So, you know, that's
Awesome.
that's a more simplified version.
Cool. Yeah. And so this is all running in the incentivized testnet, or the ITN, which is basically a simulation or a testnet version of what will eventually be the Cardano mainnet version of Shelley, the staking and incentive stuff. And it's a way that people like you are able to set up stake pools, participate in this, you know, this testing, and also get rewarded because they have truly incentivized this testnet. So the rewards that you earn from, you know, block making, you're actually going to get to keep when they move it over to mainnet. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. So that's just another reason, folks, you know, the last little bit of this incentivized testnet, it's probably getting close to where they're going to move more towards a secondary testnet that's like a release candidate for the mainnet. And so you've got a little bit of time left to go in and start, you know, participating in that. And one thing that I think is interesting that you talked about is the thing that secures the network now is oftentimes in proof of stake environments, the fact that the more stake you have in the network in terms of the network token or network coin, the more likely you are to be incented to do the right thing and to contribute to positive reinforcement on the network, right? You know, making new blocks, avoiding malicious transactions, not proposing malicious transactions in blocks, right? Because then you get rewarded for doing so. And I think it's clever. It's a clever way of doing it. But technically, like technologically, it becomes a challenge to implement proof of stake in a way that is not prone to extreme centralization. Because wealth obviously tends to centralize. That's kind of the way that the world works. Now, what's interesting about stake pools too for you is if you are just an average ADA holder, right, the native coin in Cardano, they can contribute without giving you custody of that ADA. They can contribute it to your stake pool, and you guys can sort of pool your resources to make blocks and share the spoils of those rewards. So you don't even have to create a pool if you still want to be staking in the network. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And you touched on quite a few points there. You're totally correct where you don't even have to send your ADA to a stake pool in order to delegate. In fact, the dataless experience, the Yoroi experience is very seamless. The coins will never leave your wallet. So you're always in possessions of your holdings, but you're able to support the network by delegating to a stake pool. And, you know, to touch on your point that you mentioned about wealth being concentrated to the top, I couldn't agree with that more. I think that you really nailed it there, because with this incentivized testnet, what they were trying to do is test the psychology mainly behind what it is that people are going to be doing, you know, that are operating these stake pools. So yeah, I agree with you there. It's going to be interesting to see, you know, what these smaller stake pools are going to look like when we move over to mainnet.
Absolutely. And that's the trickiest part, I think, about proof of stake is how do you give enough separation of power that it doesn't become centralized? And how do you, and to do that, you really have to rely on your users to do something, which not everyone is going to do.
Right.
And if, you know, if, for example, you only have a select group of people that really get it and really want to do it and really want to contribute, or the barrier to entry is too high from a technological or monetary standpoint, your proof of stake could be dead on arrival, or it could just be a little bit less secure than you might want. So really interesting stuff. And that's part of the reason why I'm drawn to Cardano, is because while I think people get frustrated with how long they've been around versus how much is in mainnet, and I totally get that. I totally get it. And people who are fans of Cardano, you probably get it too, even though you don't like when people say it. I totally understand that. But that's all for good reason, right? Because the approach that was taken is we're going to research this first, and we're going to quantitatively analyze proof of stake and how to implement it properly, rather than building something, realizing it doesn't work, and then trying to go back to the drawing board, which many protocols have done and are continuing to do today. So I think and I think that happened in Ethereum, quite frankly. I think they had built a lot of code for the proof of stake when in the Casper days and some of the other implementations of it. And then they realized this doesn't work. They started getting into test nets and they realized this is broken and we can't put it out. So then they had to go back to the drawing board. Cardano just skipped that whole step of going backwards and trying it again. They just tried to get it right the first time. And I think the product that they came up with is great.
Sure. Yeah, you're spot on. Yeah, absolutely. We see a whole bunch of other projects out there. You're a developer for Ethereum. There's EOS, Neo, like a whole bunch of different projects.
Yeah.
But I think what Cardano did is smart. It really is, like going through that slow, methodical process, peer review, scientific research. And, the people who are in now, however many delays that we've gone through, they're early adopters for sure.
100%. Yeah. And to that point, I think finally the loyalty and the passion and all that's come from the Cardano community, which I would argue is one of the most passionate communities in the crypto space. So if you're watching, thank you. All of the time that's been spent right now where, ADA, it's cool, but it's a speculative investment at the moment of what will be in the Cardano ecosystem. And so now finally this year, we're going to get a ton of realized dreams and goals from the IOHK side. So I'm very excited for that myself.
Yes,
awesome.
Definitely.
So are you gonna, when you have, I guess, the incentivized testnet, kind of winding down and they start moving into this Haskell testnet, which I guess is that release candidate for mainnet, are you gonna tinker and test with that too and spin up a stake pool there?
Yeah, no, that's the plan. One thing that we've been working on with my stake pool is getting it up and running on a Rock Pi.
Cool.
So that's been pretty interesting. Like I was saying with my friend Duckpool, we're kind of collaborating and figuring out what's the best setup for getting it operational on a Rock Pi. I think if we can get that done, that's going to be a huge accomplishment, considering what Cardano was going for with being this energy efficient, scalable blockchain. I think to be able to have a single board computer running this thing, it's going to be pretty awesome.
Especially something that's accessible. A lot of people don't have computers. It's just, that's the truth. They don't have computers and they don't have access to them. And blockchain being this borderless ideology, you want to be able to give the lowest possible barrier for people to get involved and to participate as actual validators and as actual block makers in a network. And so I agree with you. That's a great place to start. I quite frankly, thinking to myself, as soon as we get to this Haskell net and my, the work that I do would be translated over to mainnet, I would love to try to get it to run on like the cheapest possible Raspberry Pi setup and see. Because at that point, then, for people that want to do it but don't want to do the technical side of it, it's a great way to, show people a tutorial or just send them a pre-built one that they can just kind of plug and go. Sure.
I think that's one thing that's going to be a lot easier also. We went through the Rust code base and then transitioning over to Haskell.
Yeah.
So I feel like once we do transition to mainnet, it is going to be more seamless, definitely more like a plug and play for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think too that people right now, like yourself probably, you don't want to sink a ton of time and effort into something that is built on the Rust side, which is another programming language in case people don't know what that is. It's a way that you can quickly prototype and POC. It's a great language for that. And it's very efficient. But if all the work you do on that is not going to translate over to what the mainnet version of this is going to be, so it's maybe not the best use of time at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. We probably have, and there's no way for me to tell, but I would say maybe a month.
Yeah.
Before we move to Haskell.
For sure. Yeah. And Haskell's an interesting thing that I think people always ask me about. They say, how are you doing picking up Haskell? The truth is quite badly, actually. The thing is that, with the amount of time that I have to dedicate to learning it. And I always say the best way to learn programming, any new language, is by building things. I have time to read and I have time to, do tutorials, but I don't have time to build stuff on the side. So it's slow going for me. But I think that to that point, there are thousands upon thousands, if not maybe even hundreds of thousands or millions of Haskell development fiends, people who just swear by Haskell. It's either you love it or you absolutely hate it. There's no in between. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how many of those people start to pivot their careers towards blockchain as a result of Plutus and the Haskell language.
Yes, I'm very excited. I'm glad you mentioned Plutus. I'm very excited for Goguen.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see decentralization here very soon, but I think the real fun starts to happen when we see smart contracts.
Yeah.
And Plutus, I was looking at. There's actually a Udemy course.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people who do want to consider getting involved, it's a free Udemy course. There's lots of resources to be able to pick up on some of these things that you can get started on. If you're not able to get a stake pool up and running, you can write smart contracts.
Yep.
So lots of ways to get involved, but I think Plutus is going to be cool because I think the way they've designed it is kind of like maybe so much like a template.
Yeah.
So you can have little blocks and you can kind of build a smart contract using these pre-assembled blocks. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's very functional. So you can go through and structure it like very basic deterministic instructions, and that's something that people that don't program might not appreciate. But the reality is that there are languages like Solidity that are just wide open, and you have a lot of options, and you have to tell the computer every single step that you want it to follow to do what you want it to do. Whereas functional languages on the other side are very much so preset, templated instructions that you can give the computer to do certain things, and you just have to get those predictable results all the way down the line. So it's easier to work with in that regard than a really wide open language or an imperative language like Solidity is.
Sure.
But Marlowe too is another thing that's coming that I think is equally as powerful, if not more, because it's very much a drag and drop graphical user interface templating engine to create Plutus compatible smart contracts without having to program at all. Have you gotten to play around with that on the website yet?
I've seen it. It's
so cool.
Yeah. I'm excited for it. It's going to be awesome.
And I think people don't appreciate this enough because, there's a project that's getting a lot of attention, and rightly so, in the Ethereum world, and that's Unibright. And yes. Unibright, I have a video coming out about that very shortly, so please stay tuned. If it's out yet when I publish this, I'll link it up below. But
yes.
Unibright is creating this ecosystem where they're making it easy for enterprises that might not have the technical capacity or acumen to go and get involved in the blockchain space. It's not all the way there because Unibright has the infrastructure part and the middlewares and all this stuff. But this is the first step. And I think Cardano is probably going to go that route too, where they make a set of tools, maybe through Emergo, their business arm, to create tools to make it easy to spin up your own public interfacing Cardano node, to create smart contracts by template automatically, and then to spin up middlewares and adapters and things to help your business applications interact.
For sure.
Got to happen. And Marlowe, I think, just shows that they're pointing in that direction.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
very exciting.
It's going to be interesting to see. Talking about that. So you're mentioning Unibright. I remember watching. I'm not sure if it was you or most likely, but kind of comparing Unibright to like the WordPress for blockchain. Just having this kind of like this templated format. So wanted to know your thoughts. Do you feel like, when we do start to see smart contracts like Plutus, Marlowe, is there, because if you look at Ethereum, the most dApps by far.
For sure.
Do you see Cardano kind of stepping into that market share at all when it comes to dApps?
I do. And I talked about it a little bit on my Friday video last week. And that is, I do think that there's room in the industry. And it goes down to simply language preference is the first place where I think people are going to see some movement. There are a lot of developers out there that don't want to touch Solidity because it's a minefield. Like, it's a huge pain in the ass to use from the perspective of security and from the perspective of having a lot of room to mess up really badly if you don't have experience. And so I think there are a lot of developers who are not super comfortable building production stuff with Solidity yet. It keeps me up at night all the time writing contracts, and I do it all the time. But I think then a bunch of developers that work on really data-oriented use cases and that work on financial systems, they already use Haskell. So what are they going to try and do? They're going to take Haskell, which is basically what drives Plutus, and write those same types of apps, but in a blockchain environment. So I think we'll see people who are very language preferenced jump in, and they all think differently. Someone who's JavaScript focused, that kind of translates over to Solidity, or C focused, they probably build different stuff and are used to different stuff than someone who uses Haskell or OCaml, for example. So I think there's plenty of space. I really do.
Nice. Yeah, that's I really appreciate that insight, because I know coming from a programming background, it's kind of like you got your boots on the ground basically.
And it's nascent. I will say, even every time I build something, I mess something else up and I figure out why I messed it up. And then even things that I built 3 months ago or worked on 3 months ago and didn't finish, I'll go back and be like, what was I thinking? Because the pace at which this stuff is moving is so fast. And the same thing is going to happen with Cardano. As soon as Goguen hits, it's going to be rapid iteration on the language and the virtual machine and all that stuff. And we'll finally have a Cardano ecosystem that's like revving on all cylinders.
Yes.
Pumped.
Yes, excited. Very excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if I'll be the place. I've done some tutorials on my channel about Solidity. I don't know if I'll be the guy to go to for tutorials on Haskell and Plutus, but I'll at least give it a try in earnest.
Sure. Always worth a shot.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So Pritesh, really quickly, thanks very much for being here and joining the channel. We'll definitely do this again.
Yes.
Before we sign off, though, where can people find you on Twitter, YouTube, and all that sort of stuff? I'll link that stuff below, but shout it out.
Absolutely. So check us out. Our YouTube channel is KAIZN Crypto,
Awesome.
Talking a lot about Cardano news, tutorials, all that. You can check us out at Twitter if you're interested in following the Stakepool. Ticker symbol is KAIZN, KAIZN, and Twitter is at KAIZN Crypto. Awesome, man. Awesome. So please do follow, subscribe, like, support this guy. We need more people like him that can, teach and educate and focus on that stuff. So I'm very, very stoked about that. So Pritesh, have a fantastic rest of your weekend. We are recording this on a Saturday. That's dedication, guys. Recording on a Saturday. Working overtime over here. Working overtime. Awesome. So thanks very much, everyone. Please have a great, fantastic rest of your week, night, evening, wherever you are. Cheers. Thanks so much, guys. Take care. Take care.